What's happening, people? Very good evening to you all, and welcome to episode number 15 of the Boxing Lowdown podcast. And as always, I'm delighted to be joined by my dad, my co-host, Mr. Laurie from AFTV.
Hey, how you doing, man?
Not bad. How's it going?
Yeah, I'm all right, man. I'm all right. Fully recovered from COVID now. I'm actually back exercising. Been doing my little bits on the treadmill and stuff like that, walking. Yeah, I'm feeling good, man. Yeah, trying to stay healthy. Yeah, man, just trying to keep it 100, you know? Yeah. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. Like you. I've been running recently, but tell you what, man, my legs have been feeling it. So I have to take it a bit easy the last couple of days, but I'm still looking to get out there, get my runs in. It's obviously miss not having the gym open, man. It's not the same, is it?
Oh, it's horrible, man. It's horrible. Not just from the physical aspect, but from the mental aspect as well. Not having anywhere to train properly. I mean, I'm quite fortunate in that in our office we've got a very large office space, and my brother Robbie, shout out to him, he very kindly purchased a treadmill. So I use that most days. I must say it's hard, man. It's not easy running 30, 45 minutes on a treadmill, but you know what? I feel blessed to have that equipment in the office, because without that, probably be having to run in the road in the rain and temperatures approaching freezing and stuff like that. So yeah, man, it's been a bit of a blessing having that, but obviously it doesn't beat the gym, but they can't complain too much. At least I'm healthy.
That's what I've been doing. It's not nice, man. It doesn't feel good on your legs, especially when you get older. But shout out to everybody in the chat, man. I can see people rolling in. You guys know the deal. We'll be talking.
Tap in, man. Tap in.
Tap in, man. Hit that like button. Share the video. Subscribe to the channel. We're live every Thursday. We're always bringing you that heat with the podcast. So you know, as we do, we're going to talk our talk, and we encourage everybody to join in. Everyone, if you've got a question, anything you want to ask us, feel free to drop it in, and we'll happily answer it. But let's get straight into it, man. No delay. Let's talk boxing. You know, that's what we do best. And you know, it's a bit weird. Obviously, there's no fights or anything like this weekend, whatever that we like. No big fights anyway. And there's still stuff for us to talk about. Do you know what I mean? It was announced this week that you know, MATCHROOMS had their schedule. I think it was actually last Friday or Saturday. They announced their schedule for the upcoming months, and I'll just go through some of them fights with you, and I want to get your opinion on those. So the first fight that got announced was on February the 13th, and that was Josh Warrington against Maurizio Lara. And you know what? Actually, before I carry on, Josh Warrington, I don't know if you know, I think I found this out about half an hour before we got on here, but Josh Warrington's now vacated the IBF belt, and he's now saying that after he fights this fight against Maurizio Lara, he's vacated the belt because he wants to have a big fight against either Zhukan or who else did he say? Gary Russell. So obviously I think that would avoid him having to fight Kid Galahad, who he has beaten already. But what's your reaction to that?
Well, first and foremost, that fight, him doing that, it kind of sends out mixed messages, really, doesn't it? Because you don't know if there's an ulterior motive there. Yes, he said it's because he wants to pursue the bigger fights, but then it could easily be construed as though he's ducking Kid Galahad, who he had a very close fight with. I mean, I thought he just about pulled it out, but it was a very hard night work for him. And Kid Galahad probably does deserve a shot again somewhere down the line. So, you know, although we've spoken on this show before, I'm not a mad fan of rematches, but you know, at some point, Kid Galahad does deserve another title shot at some point. So, but yeah, man, it's difficult to gauge. You said there that he might pursue fights against Zhu Chan, the Chinese guy, who I don't know too much about. Apologies for that, but I do know a lot about Gary Russell Jr., and we know that he's been ducked by a series of fighters, including Carl Frampton, including Leo Santa Cruz, including Tank Davis. So whether he wants to go after Gary Russell Jr., I'm not so sure, man. I mean, I'd like to think he is. I'd like to take him at his word, but you know, boxing, man, you just can't really, can you? Because there's just so many things going on. So many agendas, hidden or otherwise. So many ulterior motives. You just don't know, do you? You just don't know.
Can we really accuse him of ducking not Gary Russell, of ducking Kid Galahad? I mean, he did beat him already. You know, it wasn't a great fight. He's probably thinking, you know what, my stock's going to go low if I grant this rematch in a fight I've already won. Do you know what I mean? I want to go after the bigger names. The belt, I've had the belt. It doesn't mean everything to me at this stage of my career. I'm in it for the prize fighting as well as the glory. So with him going after Gary Russell, I think it depends, innit? His next move after the Lara fight.
Yeah, I mean, there is some validity to what you say there. And that's why I said I'm not going to come out and accuse him blatantly straight out the bat right now. I'm going to see how this unfolds. Because like I said, man, if he does take on, say, Gary Russell Jr., then I would be quite impressed by him doing that, even though Gary Russell Jr. is getting a bit long in the tooth now, especially for those lighter weights. So he might be thinking to himself, well, this is the right time to catch Gary Russell Jr. Who knows? But hey, man, we'll see. With regards to the Kid Galahad, yeah, I guess he could make the claim that he's not ducking because they've fought. In fact, they fought twice. I think they fought in the amateurs. He beat him in the amateurs. He beat him a few months back in the professionals. Like you said, it wasn't a great fight. I thought he just about pulled it out. It was close. I thought that he did just enough to pull out the win, but it was very close. It could have gone either way, depending on how you score fights. But I had him up a round or two. So yeah, I think I'm gonna give him a certain amount of latitude, subject to what he does next. If he goes for Zhu Chan, then I'll be thinking, yeah, it could be a duck for Gary Russell. If he takes on Gary Russell, then I'll be much more impressed, put it that way.
Big up Jeff, man. Shout out Jeff every time. Our guy over there in Philadelphia. We had him on the show a couple of weeks ago. It's good to have you here in the chat, bro. He's put my brothers, Boxing Lowdown and Laurie, the best in the business. Warrington dropping the belt is suspect. So he thinks it's suspect, man. And
yeah, I think that you can, as I said, you can construe it either way. You know what I mean? And that's why I said we almost have to wait and see what unfolds. Because listen, if I'm in the Kid Galahad camp or I'm a Kid Galahad fan, I'll be saying, yeah, that's a straight duck. But you have to say that he's already fought Kid Galahad and beaten him. Like I said, not just once, but twice. He beat him in the amateurs as well, beat him in the pros. So he's 2-zip. And he might be thinking to himself, listen, man, I need to get the most out of my career financially and belt-wise. So if I can go and get Gary Russell's belt, then, you know what I mean, that's another feather in my cap. So I'm not going to tar him with that brush straight away.
Just saying here, he thinks Kid Galahad won that fight.
Oh, he thought Kid Galahad won. No, I gave the edge to Warrington in that fight. I thought he demonstrated slightly more aggression. He wanted it more a bit on that night to me. But, boxing's subjective, and there will be people who thought that Kid Galahad won. I wouldn't be against another fight between those two, but I could see why Warrington, and this might sound slightly contradictory to me, but I can see why Warrington would want to pursue other options, both financially and in terms of achievement, if he chose to annex Gary Russell's belt, if he can. Yeah.
Let's go through the other fights on the schedule as well. We've got David Avanesian against Josh Kelly on the 20th of February. We've got Dillian White against Alexander Povetkin 2 on the 6th of March. We've got Lawrence Okoli. He'll be taking on Krzysztof Gołacki on the 20th of March. And we've also got Conor Benn against Samuel Vargas. That's on the 10th of April. So that was Matchroom's schedule that they released there. The fight that obviously stands out to many is Dillian White against Alexander Povetkin. But what's your thoughts on the other fights, the main events?
Yeah, it's a good fight, sir. I'm looking forward to how Josh Kelly gets on against Avanesian, because that is a kind of crossroads fight for him, because, he's been spoken of very highly in terms of his talent, former top amateur, and he's going to get his first big test. I mean, some people would say he's already had a big test and failed when he fought Ray Robinson in America. I watched that fight and I thought he came up short. Okay, he got the nod. Well, he got a draw, didn't he? He got a draw.
It was a draw.
I thought he was slightly fortunate to get that draw, I must admit. But okay, listen, man, he's still undefeated. He's got an opportunity now to annex a title. Let's hope he does it. Avanesian is a very combative and very decent fighter. And so that's going to be a good fight. So it'll be interesting to see how he comes through in that night. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that.
He might lose it.
Yeah, I think I've seen a few people pick against him for this fight. So yeah, man, that would be interesting because Avanesian's in a good run of form. I saw when Avanesian beat Shane Mosley, and he did that quite comfortably. Now, sorry,
very old Shane Mosley.
Yeah. I was going to say you got to factor into the fact that Shane Mosley was well past his best, a long way past his best. But even so, man, he handled Shane with relative ease, really. You know what I mean? I have to say he was a comfortable winner. You know. So yeah, man, Avanesian, he's there to win. Make no mistake. So that will be a very good, challenging fight for Kelly. I'm also intrigued by the Lawrence Okoli fight, man, against Krzysztof Glowacki. I might even have to put in a call to a couple of my Polish friends who are big Glowacki fans. You know what I mean? Glowacki can punch, but he's not the best boxer in the world, and he's had a few hard fights. And I think that for Coley, if they can get a good game plan going, he can stick to it, man. I think he can win that fight. That's another intriguing crossroads fight because really and truly, we know Okoli can punch. We know he's got devastating right hand, and we know he's tall, and we know he's strong, and he's young, and he's ambitious. But we don't quite know how good he is yet. I mean, I'm backing him. I think he can win this fight, but it's going to be, again, it's going to be a serious test for him, man, because Glowacki's proven, tough guy, can punch, got a lot of heart, and he'll be in there to win as well because he'll be seeing it as his last opportunity to, you know, really make his mark in the division. So, yeah, man, looking forward to that. And of course, the Dillian fight, that's an intriguing one as well because obviously we know what happened in the first fight. Can he win this second fight? I think he can. However, it's a dangerous fight right up until that fight is concluded because we know if Povetkin hits him, we've seen what can happen. We've seen it already.
Yeah, got some comments here before we carry on. Jeff said, I think Okoli can win that fight. He also said here, not missing out his comment, he also said, what big fight should Warrington take next? If you're asking me, then I'd like to see the Shakur Stevenson fight. Feels up to me. Gary Russell's a good fight as well, but the Shakur Stevenson fight intrigues me. Maybe Josh Warrington might not like that one now. He might think of other options, but I'd like that fight. What do you think?
Listen, man, Jeff is right there. Listen, no sooner had Shakur won a title, he was calling out Josh Warrington. In fact, I think before he won a version of the title, he was calling out Josh Warrington. And he actually said he'd come to Britain to fight him. Then there was all the back and forth that we normally see with claims of offers and counter offers and so forth. But put it this way, man, I could see the realness in Shakur when he was talking about wanting that fight. And I have to say, I'm a big on Shakur and his skill set. And I think he would have beaten Josh Warrington. But having said that, Josh Warrington is not to be underestimated, man. You know what I mean? He's got an incredible gas tank, throws a lot of punches. His boxing skills are also underrated as well. And he's very tough, you know what I mean? So he would present a legitimate challenge to any of those guys out there. So I'd love to see the fight, but I got the impression that Shakur wanted it more than Josh, put it that way. And, you know, in answer to Jeff's question, of the fights out there that you would like to take, yeah, I mean, I'd like to see the Gary Russell Jr. fight, but yeah, man, the Shakur Stevenson fight makes a lot of sense. I'd love to see that fight. But I get the impression that Josh Warrington and his team don't really want it as much.
Another question here. Big up Conrad Boxing, regular contributor to the questions. What's happening, bro? He's put Marku versus Charlton. Maybe a sleeper on the Kelly undercard. Marku has a lot to prove after his last fight, and Charlton won't give anything away for free. He's right. That's a good fight.
Yeah.
I
mean, Florian Marco's been talking himself up a lot recently, and then he had a disappointing draw, didn't he? A lot of people thought he should have got the nod in that fight.
He won that. I think he won that fight, man.
Yeah, okay. But even so, I think the performance was less than stellar. especially given the way he's been talking himself up and calling people out. So to struggle, well, maybe not struggle. Maybe not struggles are wrong. But okay, he wasn't convincing then, put it that way. Did surprise a few people, including myself. So when you're calling out the likes of Kelly and Conor Benn and saying I'm a future world champion and then you go in there and you don't perform the way you should do, then obviously people are going to start talking. But he's got another chance to redeem himself. He's got an opponent that's going to come and he's going to be in there fighting. So let's see how he gets on.
Another question here. Big up Mohammed in the chat. He's put, can you see Okoli becoming the undisputed cruiserweight champion of the world? Now, I'll answer this one first. It's going to be difficult, man. Cruiserweight's a tough division. I mean, Usyk, he's left now. He was the former undisputed cruiserweight champion. You still got Marius Bradis there. You got some tough guys in that division, man. I don't think so, not yet. I don't know. Eventually, he will move up to heavyweight, Okoli. But there's some tough men in that division, man. Dorticus, Bradis, can't remember the other guy's name, but there's a few people there. I don't think I could, maybe not yet. I think we need to see how this fight goes first against Glowacki. Because with Okoli, as good as he looks, has his chin been tested yet? Like some of them guys at cruiserweight can bang. Like, can you remember his chin being tested?
I can't. Not really. But then this is it. This is what I was indicating before, that we really don't know how good Lawrence Okoli is. Listen, I'm big on Lawrence. I've actually met him a few times. Very nice guy, very dedicated to his craft, very ambitious. And listen, man, he impressed me with his more recent wins. Okay, he had that stinker against Isaac Chamberlain, but even then, man, he delivered some big punches in that fight. So listen, he's got a puncher's chance against anyone. And he's young, he's athletic, he's ambitious, he wants it. And I think that might be enough to see him through against the likes of Glowacki, although it won't be an easy fight. But I would imagine that Bradis is probably at the top of the tree in that division. So I don't see him as being quite ready for Marius Bradis yet. But like you said, let's see how he gets on in this one. And if he can come through this one okay, then he's in the mix. Definitely, especially with his punching power.
I think undisputed will be, it's a bit of a stretch. It's not impossible, because by the time he gets to that certain level, maybe some of the other guys might have moved on, like Bradis and Dorticus, because are getting on in age. But as of right now, I think, it's a bit of an tall order right now. Let's just get the first belt under his wing first and then go from there. But Conrad here said that Okoli is built for heavyweight, and he is. I mean, he's a massive guy, man. I remember, I've seen him. I haven't really met him, but I've seen him in the same building before. And he's just a big guy, man. He's definitely built for heavyweight, isn't he?
Yeah, listen, I've met him a few times at small hall shows at York Hall. This was a while ago. I've had a few conversations with him. Now, you're right. He's massive. I think he's 6'5". Something like that. And he's very conditioned, very fit. The only thing I would say is if you look at his frame, he's quite narrow in the legs. You know what I mean? So he's got a heavyweight frame from the upper body upwards, but his legs are quite skinny, man. So, may need to get in the weights room and doing some squats and some leg presses and all that type of stuff. But listen, man, I've been impressed by his rise so far, and I like the way he conducts himself, both in and outside the ring. And I reckon he represents a clear and present danger to anyone in the cruiserweight division. As I said, I've got him edging out Glowacki, but I think Bradis at the moment is probably one too far active. But let's see how he gets on against Glowacki before we start talking about undisputed. He's still got to win a version of the title first.
Yeah, for sure. Look, before we move on, I just want to get your thoughts on Conor Benn and Samuel Vargas. Now, Conor Benn, I was on another podcast earlier on this week, and we were talking about who could be the potential next British star. Now, I know Jeff will be listening closely to this one, but the next British star, and someone mentioned Conor Benn had the potential to do so. I don't know if you saw his interview with IFL this week, where he spoke in fluent Spanish, man. I thought that was brilliant, what he was saying. Has Conor Benn got the potential? He's got the name. His dad was a big name in his own right, huge name in the sport of British boxing. He's making his way. He's exciting. Kid can speak different languages, as we've seen. Does he have the potential to be a superstar? the next British star?
You know what? That's a very good question, and I'm going to keep it 100 because if you'd have asked me that when I first started watching Conor Benn, which was 4 or 5 years ago, when he's about 19, 20, I think he's 24 now.
Yeah.
If you'd have asked me then, I would have told you flat out no. I would have said, no, man, you know what I mean? He's not about that life. He's not going to aspire to that level. But I have to say, man, and I'm being honest now, he's one of the most improved boxers in this country. I mean, his performance against the German kid, Formella, it was very impressive, man. That jab on that night, that was a world-class jab he had there. And what I also liked about him, man, was his aggression, his shot selection, you know what I mean? And the way he put his punches together, I was very impressed, man. And then not just that, but he kept a level of consistency going right through to the end of the fight. He was mega impressive that night. And I remember watching him, I was thinking, wow, if he continues that rate of progression and improvement, yeah, why not, man? You know what I mean? Why not?
I think the Josh Kelly fight will be big. If he was to beat, let's say, Josh Kelly after Samuel Vargas, then I think he could really has the potential. But is he in the tough division, man? That's the only issue.
But what I would say is, right, and again, I'm keeping it 100. You can only go by what we see, and listen, stars make fights. But what I saw of him that night, and even previous to that, is more impressive than what I've seen from Josh Kelly. Just keeping it real.
Josh Kelly's got the pedigree, the experience. He's got that in abundance compared to Conor Benn, hasn't he?
Yeah, that's true. He's got the experience. He's got the amateur pedigree, and he's a very good fighter, no doubt about it. He's got a good coach in Adam Booth. But I'm looking at the two of them right now, and if I'm keeping it 100, man, I think Conor Benn's ceiling could be higher. Yeah, man, we got to talk the truth.
Go on.
Yeah, we got to talk the truth. And is it JZ? What he said there was very true. He is very marketable. He speaks well. And, you know what I mean, I was very impressed with that little, the Spanish thing he did the other day, man. I thought that was very impressive. I was like, right, my man, you know what I mean? He could speak the language fluently. Well, he certainly mastered those phrases there anyway. So, yeah, man, Conor could well rise to be that star.
Jay-Z said here that he is very marketable, come along in which showed in his last fight, but he's too small at welterweight. Would love to see the recent Ben and Brooks sparring, wonder who got the better of that. I think he is a bit small at welterweight, to be fair.
But he's still growing.
He's got the potential to be star, but I just think at that weight, it's a very tough weight division to excel in, isn't it? But that don't mean that you can't have the big fights and make the big money, man. Doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, listen, man, he's 24, so I would imagine he probably hasn't acquired his full man strength yet. He probably won't get that for another couple of years. So that's what I'm saying. If they continue to put him in there with decent fighters, and his progression continues at the rate it is now, he looks like he could be a serious contender. Why not? Yeah.
Big up DS in the chat here. He's put Laurie spitting facts. You know how we do every week, man. He spits facts every week, man. But yeah, I think with I didn't know that Conor Benn and Kell Brooks sparred. Did you? Did you hear about that?
I hadn't heard about it, but listen, these guys in the same weights, they move around from gym to gyms looking for sparring. And it was even like that back in the day when I was an amateur and used to get pros roll up at our gym looking for sparring. And you know, I mean, a lot of it goes under the radar unless something dramatic happens, but. Yeah, man, and you hear all these stories about who got dropped in sparring, who got the better of this, who got the better of that. I mean, most of the time it don't mean much, man, because sparring is sparring and fighting is fighting. But sometimes you are in a gym and somebody rocks up for sparring and you don't know too much about him, and then they get in the ring and they perform very well. You think everyone's like, who's that guy? Who's that guy, man? Where's he from? And you sort of keep a lookout for that guy in the future because you think, yeah, man, I've seen him. He looks like he can fight. So, yeah, man. Yeah, it happens. Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised if they did spar each other. I haven't heard who got the better or who didn't or whatever. But yeah.
Good question here from Conrad. But do you think he would beat Chris Congo right now? I think
that's a good fight. Now that's a good fight.
But will he take it? I don't know if he'd pursue that one.
No, I don't think it would be in his best interest to pursue a fight with Chris Congo right now. I'm very impressed with Chris Congo as well, actually. And listen, man, stars make fights. Chris Kongo's a lot taller, leaner. He again's got very good amateur experience. But Chris Kongo looks like a guy with a lot of potential also. So yeah, that division is hotting up. There's some good fighters. But I don't think the brain trust around Conor Benn will pursue a fight with Chris Kongo anytime soon. Basically because Chris Kongo's kind of flown under the radar. So that would be a very dangerous fight for not much reward, I would imagine. Not that I'm encouraging ducking now. I just want to put it out there. But I don't think that Conor Benn's, the guys around him will pursue a fight with Chris Kongo at this moment in time. But it could change if they have to fight for a British title or, you know, an eliminator down the road or whatever, or European title even. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's heating up. Like I said, domestically, the welterweight division looks good, and obviously abroad as well. I mean, we've got the top guys at the top of the tree, but then you've got the prospects as well coming through, contenders like Jaron Ennis and Virgil Ortiz, who apparently is going to be fighting Maurice Hooker. That would be a great fight as well. So
this would be a great fight. Yeah.
Coming out, man. But before,
I'm told that Jaron Ennis is pursuing fights with top welterweights.
He said he's ready for them all. He said he's ready for them now.
Yeah, he's been linked with a few fighters in that division, and he's calling them out. And I like to see it, man. He's ambitious. You know. Let's
move on anyway, man. Let's move on anyway, because I wanted to get your opinion on Deontay Wilder. There were some strong rumors over the past week that he may be pursuing the fight against Charles Martin now, maybe letting go of the Fury fight, the third one. I don't know what that means, like with him, if he does fight Charles Martin, what that means for a third Fury fight. But it looks to me on the outside, obviously I don't know, but it looks like that maybe they've given up hope of that fight, and the Charles Martin fight is something on his radar. Now, what's your thoughts on that particular fight? Because I'm getting mixed opinions on it. Some people are like, yeah, you know what? That's not a bad fight. It'll be a good build-up, be entertaining while it lasts. Whereas other people are like, nah, man, I don't want to see this. Like, he'll knock out Charles Martin. He'll be like Dominic Brazil. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts on it is, listen, with regards to Wilder, it looks to all intents and purposes that his third fight with Fury is not going to happen. There's been a lot of talk in the press about mediation, and then basically that means that they're seeking to pay Wilder off. There's been noises coming out of the Wilder camp that he's refusing that, and he still wants a third fight. But I think the more and more things unfold, the less and less likely it looks like that fight with Fury is going to happen. Certainly not now anyway. Maybe after Fury fights AJ, and if Fury wins, he might decide to give Wilder a rematch, but certainly doesn't seem like that's going to happen anytime soon. So in the meantime, Wilder is still an active fighter, or should be looking to be an active fighter. He needs fights. And if they can get Charles Martin in a ring, I wouldn't have too much of a problem with that fight, to be honest with you, because Charles Martin, okay, he got blown away by AJ. And then I think shortly after that, there was some stories circulating on the internet and so forth that he was going through a rough time of it mentally. But to give him credit, man, he seems to have fought back from that and got himself into a good mental state. He's had a couple of fights. He had a draw and he's had a couple of wins. And he's looked okay, man. And he looks well. And he's talking it up. And he says he wants a big fight. So given Wilder's last fight, where, let's face it, he was comprehensively beaten by Tyson Fury, he probably doesn't want a fight straight away that is too demanding. And, you know, I'm not saying that with any disrespect to Charles Martin, but the Charles Martin fight would make sense, to be honest, for both parties. Because if you're Charles Martin, you need another big fight to show people that, you know, you can get back to the top. And if you're Wilder, you need a fight to try and reestablish yourself, shake off the ring rust, get yourself back in and amongst the top heavyweights in the world. And Charles Martin does have a bit of a name. So yeah, that fight makes sense. In terms of how it would turn out, you would have to favor Wilder, but then you don't know psychologically how much he's affected from, let's face it, the beating he took from Tyson Fury. And then all the other stuff that went on after that I wasn't very impressed with, you weren't very impressed with, and still rumbling on. So his refusal to accept defeat and stuff like that. So you don't know psychologically quite where Deontay is at the present time. So maybe if you're Charles Martin, you might be thinking this is as good a time as any in which to catch him. Hey, so that could be a very interesting fight, at least while it lasts.
Big up Ian Hamilton here. He's put a comment with regards to Conor Benn. He said, Conor Benn is growing on me more and more. He's good to watch and has big spike when he hits you. Isn't afraid to back himself. Interesting to see how far he goes. Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with that, Ian.
I mean, there were times in that Formella fight, and forgive me if I'm, you know, if I'm blowing smoke, but there were times in that Formella fight that I looked at him teeing off on Formella, and Conor Benn reminded me, dare I say, of his old man in that fight, man. Nigel Benn, who was a great fighter. And there were times with sharpness and despite, like the previous guy said there, and the way he was letting his hands go, man, I thought, wow, this guy looks good. And himself with IFL, shout out to Coogan, as Conor Benn said, listen, I'm only going to get better. So, you know, that is a real scary thought for some other welterweights out there. If he can perform like that at 24 and he's got time to get better, yeah, man, I'm looking forward to see how that pans out.
Going back to Deontay Wilder, so my thoughts on the fight against Charles Martin is I don't mind it. I know there's been some detractors from it. They think it's just a waste of time, but I think it's potentially entertaining, man. It's entertaining build-up. I think, the fight is made for Wilder, in my opinion. Charles Martin is quite upright. Do you know what I mean? He's not fleet foot or nothing. I think if Wilder catches him, he can go. So I think it's a good fight for Deontay Wilder. We don't know like how much that defeat to Tyson Fury took out of him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, man, I mean, listen, whenever you take a loss in boxing, it's always going to affect your confidence, your psyche a little bit. Most fighters, anyway. But let's face it, that was quite a big loss for Wilder, both physically and psychologically. You can see that he was really affected by it. So you don't know how much demons he's carrying going into his next fight. And if Charles Martin can stick around for a few rounds, he could make it interesting. You know what I mean? He could do, because
he can box.
I've seen some of his fights since he fought AJ. I don't remember all the names. There was the guy that he fought. I think he had either a draw or a close loss to the Polish guy that fights out in New York that they were hyping up, and he did well in that fight, man. So yeah, I think if Martin can get himself back in shape.
You're talking about CANELO.
Yeah, I remember watching that fight, and he was expected to blow Charles Martin away, a bit like what Wilder would do here. And instead of that, it was a very competitive fight, and Charles Martin fought well. Now, if they fight, him and Wilder fight, and he can get out the first 2 or 3, 4 rounds, he could make it interesting, because he does have some skill. Adam Kaunaki, that's it. Thanks, Will. Appreciate it. Yeah, so if he can get out the early rounds intact or in relative tact, and then, you know, start applying his own game plan, we know that Wilder is not the best boxer in the world. And like I said, him coming off that, let's face it, crushing defeat against Fury, who knows how his mind might start playing tricks. So yeah, I'd like to see that. Why not?
Big up Will here. He's left another comment. He's put, big up fellas. Matchroom schedule is nice, although the Warrington matchup leaves a lot to be desired. I agree. Great fight for Ben, White, Okoli, and Kelly, though. Yeah, I think that the schedule's pretty good, man. I mean, you've got Shannon Courtney and Ball, number 2, Rachel Ball. They're fighting again. Zelfa Barrett's he's on there again. I think it's a good rollout, man. I think there's some good fights on these cards, and I'm looking forward to it. At the end of the day, we ain't really got any boxing, have we? So it's good to have the schedule back. I'm looking forward to it. I think it'd be entertaining. Got another comment here from Jay-Z. He's put, Joyce recently rated Martin, saying how Martin gave him tough sparring in Big Bear and how he had issues going into the AJ fight. I could believe that. Can you?
Yeah, well, listen, I do. However, the issues going into the Joshua fight, we don't know how much to make of that. I mean, listen, I remember the prelude and the build up to the Joshua fight, and Charles Martin was talking very confidently. I remember, I think him seeing on one of the build-up shows where they had the face-to-face, and he was describing himself as a god and how he walks the earth like a god and all that. So he certainly didn't seem like he was carrying any issues going into the fight. But then we never really know. I guess there's always... Listen, AJ might have had issues going into that fight. So I don't like to take too much out of that. What I would say though is that since the AJ fight, I've been quite impressed with the way Charles Martin has slowly but surely rebuilt his career. And, you know, I think that the fight against Wilder makes sense on both sides. So, yeah, let's get it on. I'd like to see it. I'm sure you too.
Rumours that Deontay Wilder split with Shelley Finkel. I think there was an interview with Joseph Parker's trainer. And was it Joseph Parker? I can't remember, but someone on Boxing Social anyway.
Higgins, isn't it?
Yeah,
but you know what? I would never take too seriously.
Hold on. It wasn't him. I think it was, I can't remember now. But yeah, it's left my mind. But anyway, there's rumours that he split from Shelley Finkel. I don't know how true it is, but if it is,
yeah,
I mean,
there were rumours going around, but that was subsequently denied. I don't know how much of that is true. It probably isn't true, to be honest. There's been a lot of stuff surrounding Wilder, hasn't there? The only thing we don't seem to hear about Wilder is when he's going to get in the ring and fight. You know what I mean? Seems to be so much stuff outside of the ring concerning him, and not that much stuff going on in it, which is, like I said, why I'd like to see him fight Charles Martin. He probably needs to get in the ring and start and resume his career, man. Because let's face it, he did suffer that bad loss to Fury, but it's not all over for him, surely. I mean, he gets back on the winning track, then, you know, he could make a push at getting another world title shot. The name is big enough. The Wilder name is big enough. So let's go for it.
Big up Ian Hamilton here. He's put, like you said, Martin is absolutely tailor-made for Wilder. Perhaps 3 or 4 rounds before Wilder completely butchers him, but entertainingly will be. Yeah, that's what I said. I could see Martin. I think he's good, but like Dominic Brazil, he's good, but he's just too upright for me. I wouldn't mind seeing it, but I just think that Martin's a bit too upright, a bit too, you know, he's not got a lot of movement. He's not going to be able to look how AJ caught him with that right. Do you know what I mean? I think if Wilder, well, yeah, it could be some timber.
The thing is, with Charles Martin, unfortunately for him, especially in this country, he will always be remembered for that 2-round slaughter at the hands of AJ. But before that, he was unbeaten, and since then, he's lost 1 fight, but you know he's performed creditably. So, and listen, with Wilder's fights, they seem to take on a very similar type of pattern. I mean, he either blasts you out of there, like what he did with Brazil, or the fights will, how they tend to unfold is that Wilder will make slow starts and he's often behind up until he catches up with the opponent. So that's why I said that if Charles Martin can get through the early rounds, he could make it interesting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And obviously it depends on how much ambition he shows and how much he's prepared to show and prove and go in there and try to win. But I reckon if he turns up in shape with the right mental attitude, and like I said, if he gets out of the first 1, 2, 3, 4 rounds, it could be a good fight.
Big up Mohammed here. He's put, if Wilder fights and wins against Charles Martin, he'll be IBF number 2 in the rankings, and then he can have an IBF eliminator fight to become mandatory for the AJ Tyson fight, maybe. Yeah, I saw that. I think you might have commented out on my video. That's a good point, because it's another reason why this fight makes sense for Wilder, because he hasn't got a belt. So if he goes in there against Charles Martin and he beats him, he's number 2. I think who's number 1? Hergovich. So maybe that, yeah, I don't know if that happens, but it's interesting that he could take that fight and get high up in the rankings, and it makes sense for him. Yeah,
listen, man, Muhammad makes a great point there. He you know, listen, Wilder's got to get his fighting career back on track. There's been too much stuff going outside the ring. He needs to get back in the ring, resume his career. He's still a big name. He's still talented. He's still got the big right hand. If he lands that right hand, most guys are going to go, if not all of them. So there's still a lot to play for. The problem he's going to have is the longer he takes to get back in the ring, you know what I mean, he's going to struggle for motivation, I would imagine. And then you've got the young guys coming up, the new wave of guys coming up, the Hergoviches, the Italian, Guido from Italia, from Italian, sorry. Italian guy, Guido, I think his name is. There's other guys coming up. Joe Joyce is staking his claim. You've got Usyk, you know what I mean? So there's another wave of fighters coming up, man. So that's the problem he might run into. He needs to get back in the ring, re-establish himself, and try and get his title back.
Big up Will here. He's put, interesting that the IBF belt isn't listed as being on the line for the Warrington-Lara fight on BoxRec last I checked. Do you guys know anything about why this may have happened? Yeah, not sure if you joined late, Will, but we said it earlier on at the beginning. Josh Warrington, literally, I found out about half an hour before we started this podcast. He's vacated the IBF belt now. He's vacated that belt. And the reason why he vacated it, according to him, is so he can pursue the bigger fights after this Lara fight. So Kid Galahad's the mandatory challenger for the IBF belt. Josh Warrington's obviously already beaten him. He's looking at fights against the Chinese guys, Yu Can or Gary Russell Jr. They were the two names that he mentioned. So that's the reason why he's vacated the IBF belt. So it is true. It is true. Conrad Boxing here, he's put, who do you see as number 2 in the US after Wilder at heavyweight, not counting Ruiz? I'll go first. I don't know. It's probably got to be, who's there? There's Kaunaki, probably Michael Hunter, isn't it? Probably Michael Hunter, maybe.
Yeah, Michael Hunter. Yeah, I mean,
So Michael Hunter, Charles Martin, Kaunaki, Andy Ruiz.
But I think you would have to count Ruiz because Ruiz is basically an American fighter, isn't it? I know he's got he's of Mexican extraction, and I know he boxed for Mexico in the Olympics. But he is, to all intents and purposes, American, really, isn't he? So I don't know. Him and Wilder would be a good fight. That's another good fight.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great fight. I'd like to see that one. 50-50 fight, if you ask me. You know what I mean? So, hey.
Another comment here. Martin lost to Kaunaki. That was entertaining, pretty close fight. Martin is not great, but he's not terrible either, in my opinion. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, he's a decent fighter. He's a decent fighter. And like I said, he's on an upward trajectory because he suffered the humiliating loss to AJ, and everyone sort of clowned him and wrote him off. But to be fair to the guy, he's experienced problems outside the ring as well, and he's overcome those seemingly. And he's had a few wins, and now people are talking about him in that breadth of, you know, fighting people like Wilder and other people. So, yeah, he's done well. Credit is due.
Nathan here in the chat, he's put, Dominic Brazil is fighting Otto Wallin in a few weeks. Decent scrap. Yeah, I think that's on the undercard of Broner, isn't it? So that's a decent card. And he's put Wallin on points, I think. Interesting.
Yeah, well, Wallin had that very decent effort against Tyson Fury. A lot of people, myself included, thought he was very unlucky not to get a stoppage win over Fury because that cut eye, man, that was, wow, that's as bad as it gets normally, isn't it? And for Fury to be allowed to fight on, I can only suggest that, you know, that may have had something to do with the fight with Wilder in the offing, why the referee never did what he would normally have done and stopped the fight. That being said, Brazil versus Wallin, that's an interesting fight, man. That's a good fight. That's a competitive fight.
Dominic Brazil,
Wallin has the better skills. Brazil is the bigger, stronger man, possibly hits harder.
Has Brazil fought since he lost to Wilder?
No.
That was a long time ago, man. That was a long time ago he fought Wilder, wasn't it?
Yeah. Although that was a devastating loss.
2019, was it?
Yeah, that was a devastating loss for him. I think Dominic Brazil is one of those guys that he looks good operating at a certain level. The minute he stepped up, he gets found out because he was decked and knocked out by AJ as well, wasn't he? So, but I think him versus Otto Wallin, that is a very decent fight. As I said, I would probably say that Otto Wallin has got more in terms of skill. But obviously, Dominic Brazil is a massive heavyweight. He's one of these giants, isn't he? About 6 foot 6, 6'7", 18 stone plus or whatever it is. So he's going to be naturally bigger, stronger, possibly more powerful in punching power department. So yeah, man, that's an interesting fight. Yeah, I look forward to watching that for sure.
Galahad Dickens 2 could happen for the IBF, maybe. Yeah, I could see that happening. I think that was mentioned. Another comment here from Mohammed. He's put, I just checked and Charles Martin has been moved to #1 in the IBF. So there you go. We'll see. That makes sense for Deontay Wilder for sure. Yeah. But as we carry on, let me just move.
It's funny how these fighters always seem to go up in the rankings when these fights are muted, isn't it? All of a sudden, he jumped up to the #1 spot. So obviously, if Wilder gets through him, he'll be probably the mandatory for the IBF type version of the title. But we'll see. We'll see.
Two more topics I want to talk about here before we go out. Let's talk about Canelo. because Canelo, it's looking like, you know, fresh off his wide points victory, he's beating over Callum Smith last month. He's already got another fight booked in next month against Avni Yildirim. That's going to be on February the 27th in Miami, according to a lot of reports. And he signed like a one-fight matchroom deal with Eddie Hearn. And I think that's with the Billy Joe Saunders fight in mind on in Cinco de Mayo. So one thing about Canelo, man, one thing that I do like about him is that he's the #1 fighter in the world, according to many. And he's mapping out his schedule. You know, he fought in December. He's back out.
I've got to check it there. I've got to check it there. What is there to like about that? Him fighting Avni Yildirim?
Not enough fighters are doing it. Like,
Avni Yildirim. He's coming.
He's keeping that. What are the other fighters doing?
Why is he not fighting a more meaningful challenge? Why is he not fighting Benavidez or Charlo?
He's fighting Avni Yildirim. Then his aim. What he said was his aim was to become undisputed super middleweight champion. So he's fighting Avni Yildirim because that was a fight that was sanctioned or whatever by the WBC. We know there's politics there, but it's a stay busy fight. I don't mind if a person takes a stay busy fight if they're active, because he's already mapping out his future. He's got Billy Joe Saunders in May. He fought Callum Smith in December. Avni Yildirim in February. What are the other top fighters doing? They fight once.
Listen,
for like 6 months.
That of all the fights you've mentioned on the show this week, that is by far the least attractive one. He's going to run through Avni Yildirim. That's how did Avni Yildirim get sanctioned as a mandatory for that title? Seriously, I mean, you just got to wonder what's going on here. It's ridiculous, that fight is. And at the same time, we're learning through social media that he turned down vast sums of money to fight Jermell Charlo. He's clearly not interested in fighting Benavidez at this time. It's just disappointing.
His target is to be undisputed. How could you be against that?
I'm very against it because he's not fighting the best fighters. He's fighting Avni Yildirim, which is what. Listen, shall I tell you what Avni Yildirim is most known for? His claim to fame is getting knocked cold by Chris Eubank Jr. inside 3 rounds. So a fight with Avni Yildirim makes absolutely no sense to anybody apart from those in the for a financial point of view and for Canelo. It's a
Hold on, wait. The bigger picture is he wants to be undisputed champion at super middleweight. The title holders at super middleweight are Billy Joe Saunders, Canelo, and Caleb Plant. He last fought in December. He picked up the belt from Smith. He's having a stay busy fight now. All right, it's an easy fight. And then he's going to fight Billy Joe to take.
The reason why I'm so against it is because it's not a meaningful fight. It's a nonsense fight against, with respect, a not very good opponent. It's a nonsense fight. And when you consider the guys that he could be fighting, Jermell Charlo, Benavidez, Caleb Plant.
Well, Charlo's a middleweight. He's not a super middleweight.
No, but he said that he wants to fight at super middleweight or middleweight. He said that. He's been open in saying that. Benavidez has been calling out Canelo for the longest time.
None of them got better.
Caleb Plant says he wants that fight. They're just getting like pushed to the side while he devours Avni Yildirim. Come on, man. It's a joke thing.
But he wants to be undisputed super middleweight champion.
He can say that, but what I'm saying is the actions do not compare to the words.
How's it saying that?
No, because why are you fighting Avni Yildirim? Who is he?
Yeah, but it's a warm-up fight. It's a stay busy fight until May. The reason why he's signing with MATCHROOMS is
I am not impressed with that not one bit.
The Yildirim fight you're not, but he's fighting Billy Joe in May. He said this year.
Well, we will see. But what I'm saying is, what we do know is that he's fighting Avni Yildirim, and that fight sucks. It sucks big time to me. You know what I mean? So you can say, what I'm saying to you right now is, you could say, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, but the actions are not comparable with the words.
Well, he's showing more to me. He's showing more to me than a lot of other fighters because this is a stay busy fight, cool. But Billy Joe Saunders is close to being signed in May. And then that's one step.
How long have we been saying that?
Well, it was already put in other than the coronavirus last year, which halted it from happening. I
think we need, listen, Canelo is not the only one, but he's an example of what I call the 3-headed monster in boxing, right? The three-headed monster being, as I said to you last week, number one, ducking, right? And he's clearly been ducking the best fighters at that weight class, right? Now, there's a difference between ducking and scared and whether he could beat them. Who knows? He might well go on and beat these guys, but he's clearly ducking them at the moment. He's ducking the likes of Charlo, Benavides, and people like that. Okay. Second on that three-headed monster is cherry picking, and that's what the Abner year is doing. It's cherry picking. You're calling it a warm-up. I'm calling it cherry pick. And then the third monster is the Peds thing, which he's a 2 times drugs cheat. So in many ways, as much as I like watching Canelo in the ring, I like him displaying his skill set, and I appreciate his talents as a fighter. He's a big part of the problem in today's boxing. He's not the only one. And I want to make that clear, because I know you were going to go in and mention Errol Spence. Yes, I'm on his case as well, the way he's treating Terence Crawford. And there are other names that come to mind. You know what I mean? We've only got to see what's happened with the Ryan Garcia. Him recently, he's carrying on like a clown. I mean, this guy, he wins a eliminator to fight Devin Haney, and then he starts calling out everyone else apart from Devin Haney. So what was the point of you having an eliminator for that title then, if you're not going to fight him? You might as well have let somebody else fight Luke Campbell, and then let the winner of Luke Campbell and AN other fight Devin Haney, because you're just slowing everything up. And I've really got a problem with guys like that. You know what I mean? It's ruining the sport, man. It really is. You know what I mean? Let the best fight the best, and let's get these titles unified, man, and get the guys who engaging in this ducking stuff, get them out of the sport. You know what I mean?
I agree with what you said about about Ryan Garcia. I totally agree on that. But what you just said there, let's get the titles unified. That's what he's trying to do.
He's not trying to do it, Daryl. He's not trying to do it. He's fighting Avni Yildirim. You know what I mean?
We've cleared that. But I mean, after that in May, it's like a 2-fight deal. You beat Yildirim, get that out the way. You only fought last month. Get that Yildirim fight out the way. Then beat Billy Joe Saunders in May. His goal, what he said at the beginning of the year, was to become undisputed super middleweight champion. And he's going that direction.
Well, okay, you could say he's going in that direction in a very roundabout way. What I'm saying that this fight here sucks. Nobody wants to see it. Absolutely nobody wants to see Canelo versus, unless you're a rabid Canelo fan or, you know, an Abner Yildirim fan that just wants to see him get paid, because we know he's got absolutely zero chance of winning that fight. Zero. Yeah, and zero. I'm trying hard not to be too disrespectful to Abner Yildirim, because I don't like dissing fighters. You know what I mean? I don't want it to come across like, you know what I mean, I'm out to disrespect this guy. I'm not. But at the same time, man, if boxing is going to protect its attractiveness, you know what I mean, we've got to have guys that want to fight the best guys. And at the moment, Canelo's not showing me that he wants to do that. He's not. That's my opinion. I guess other people might have a different opinion. And like I said, this is not a knock on him as a fighter. I appreciate his talents. I do actually like watching him. But come on, man, you know what I mean? He's taking advantage of his position in the sport. And it's to the detriment of boxing. And if we're real boxing fans, man, we need to call this stuff out. It's fucking game, man.
Big up DS in the chat here. He's put Ruiz as number 2, Hunter number 3. I guess that's answering the question earlier about the best American heavyweight after Wilder. Yeah. Nathan's got a question here. He's put, how highly do you rate Joe Cordina?
Yeah, I like Joe Cordina. He's a very good fighter, very talented, very skillful. Top amateur he was. He's making good progress as a pro. But we got to see him
step up fight this year.
Yeah, we got to see him in some more challenging, shall we say, fights, some more meaningful fights before we can really give an indication as to how far he's going to go. But, you know, I would say he's going to go reasonably far in the sport, yeah. Based on what I've seen so far, he looks good.
Conrad Boxing here has put, what can we really expect from Billy Joe Saunders against Canelo? It's not 2017 anymore. And yeah, look, Conrad, Billy Joe Saunders, for me, he's got the style to give Canelo problems. But at this stage, I don't think he don't beat Canelo for me. Not at all. I've seen some people say, oh, yeah, he could do it. Well, you know, Mayweather did it. But he's not Floyd Mayweather. Do you know what I mean? And the thing is,
I can't see Billy Joe beating him.
Billy Joe Saunders, he hasn't looked good at super middleweight for me either. Since he stepped up to super middleweight, he hasn't looked very impressive. He looked better as a middleweight. Canelo is just looking like a freak.
Right. Let me ask you a question, right? So who are the other title holders in that super middleweight division?
Billy Joe Saunders and Caleb Plant. Remember, Benavidez had the belt.
Yeah.
He lost it outside the ring.
I was going to say you throw in Benavidez as a top super middleweight as well, because he did have the belt. He lost it on the scales, right? And then Jamel Charlo has said he's more than happy to move up to super middleweight and take on Canelo. He's been, let's be honest, man, he's been chasing Canelo, it would appear anyway, for some time. So we've got, of those fighters we just named, Billy Joe Saunders, Caleb Plant, Jamel Charlo, and Benavidez. So out of those fighters, be honest now, who would you say is the lesser of those four?
The lesser of those four, to answer your question before, the two champions are Billy Joe and Caleb Plant. The lesser of those four, in my humble opinion now, at super middleweight is Billy Joe Saunders.
Exactly. And who is Canelo looking to fight?
Yeah, but who's got the belt?
No, but there's another belt there. Caleb, why is he not going after Caleb Plant?
Probably the easier fight to make. Saunders is with Matchroom and DAZN. Canelo's with Matchroom.
He's been pretty much a free agent. So he signed this deal with Matchroom and DAZN so he can get the Billy Joe fight. What I'm saying to you is, what I believe, and this is no disrespect to Billy Joe Saunders, he's targeting Billy Joe Saunders because he sees him as a lesser challenge than any of the other guys. And that is basically what we're seeing with Canelo throughout his career. He's done that a lot.
What about Callum Smith? He fought him first.
Yeah, he fought him first. And he obviously got that right because he saw that as an easy win, and it was. You know what I mean? He's not taking on the best guys at any weight class. He's basically jumping up and down in weight. You know what I mean? And picking off guys that he thinks he can win. And he has beaten them, to be fair. He has beaten them and beaten them well. But to me, he's not pursuing the biggest challenges. That's my opinion of Canelo.
I'm going to respond to that.
In a lot of ducking.
Mohammed, I'll see your question. I'm going to answer your question in a minute. Conrad, he seems to agree with you. He's saying he's planning his steps very carefully for sure.
Yes, man. Yes. There's going to be some people who watch this, right? And they're going to say, oh, hating. Listen, what I'm spitting is facts.
Okay, here's what I need to say, yeah? Here's what I'm going to say by it. In boxing, yeah, all right, Canelo is the biggest star in the sport. But how could you fault someone for wanting to be...
According to some people, it's Ryan Garcia.
No, but I'm talking about Canelo. He said at the beginning of the year, he said, look, I want to become undisputed super middleweight champion. In order for me to do that, I need to beat the champions. The champions are Billy Joe Saunders and Caleb Plant. Forget the Avni Yildirim fight. He's going to blow him away. Cool. That's a warm-up fight. He's got Billy Joe Saunders in May. If he can fight Caleb Plant in September, both of which are realistic possibilities, then he can have that aim of becoming undisputed champion. And ain't that what you want people to do in boxing? Become like the best in their division?
I want that, but I want the best to fight the best or meaningful challenges. And I see with Canelo, I see a fighter that has established a pattern in how he goes about his business, which is he acquires world titles in numerous weight classes. But what he does in doing that is that he goes up and he cherry picks the champions he wants to fight in order to acquire the belts. And I'm saying that enough is enough now, man. We want to see you take on the top guys, more meaningful fights. So, for example, you know what I mean, you're relentlessly pursuing Billy Joe Saunders all of a sudden because you're realizing that, you know what I mean, you got Benavidez on your case and Caleb Plant and Jamel Charlo. So now all of a sudden you're putting it out there that you want to fight Billy Joe Saunders because you've seen that Billy Joe is not the fighter he was a few years back and that he has trouble motivating himself when he's not fighting. And he's probably a very winnable fight for you. You know what I mean? And we've seen that a lot with him. It's not just Billy Joe he's doing this to. He's done that to, I mean, look at the fight with Kovalev. He jumped up to light heavy. And a lot of people were like, oh, mad impressed by that. But let's strip it down a bit. He went after Kovalev, right? 6 months after he fought, well, sorry, not even 6 months, a few months after he fought Anthony Yard, right? So he didn't have that much time to prepare. Apparently put a load of clauses in the contract and stuff like that. And, you know, he won. And listen, yes, he won. He knocked Kovalev out. On the face of it, it was very impressive. But he had a lot of things going his own way going into that fight. And that's what I'm saying, man. Would he have fought a Bivol or Beterbiev? No. He went up to light heavyweight and picked off who he thought was the weakest at that particular weight class. And that's the problem I have with Canelo. I'm not knocking him as a fighter. He's a tremendous fighter. But some of the other stuff that swirls around with him, the ducking, the cherry picking, and the peg taking, I'm mad against that stuff. So that's why I can't really put him up there the way I would like to. You know what I mean? And that's how I feel about Canelo.
Yeah. Big up Mohammed Zishan here in the chat. He's put 5 fights that you would love to see this year. And I'll let you have some time to think, and I'll say mine. But Mohammed, my top 5 fights that I would love to see this year, maybe not even top 5, but 5 fights that I would love to see. Obviously, I'm going to say the fight that we all want to see. That's AJ against Fury. It's looking like that will happen now. I also want to see Spence and Crawford. That probably won't happen. I want to see Beterbiev and Bivol. That's a fight I'd love to see. I really want to see that. I'd like to see Josh Taylor against Jose Ramirez. That looks like it's going to happen. And I need to see another big fight in the lightweight division. Now, you throw the names and mix it up. I don't care. Maybe Devin Haney and Teofimo Lopez.
Yeah, I was going to throw that in there.
Tank and Ryan Garcia.
Gary Russell Jr. You know, Spence versus Crawford, AJ versus Fury. Yeah, man. I mean, there's quite a few fights out there that I'd like to see. Whether we'll see them, of course, is another completely different matter. I mean, of those fights that me and you've just mentioned there, how many realistically do you think will happen? Probably none of those. And that's the problem with boxing, isn't it? 2021, the only one of those fights that we spoke of that is likely to happen is AJ and Fury. And we're not even sure if that's going to happen yet, because there's still a bit of a way to go in terms of the negotiations. So I would caution people against getting too worked up and too excited about that fight yet, because like I said, man, there's other intangibles there. They need a venue. There's the issue with Wilder in the background, what's going to happen with him, because he's still pursuing his 3rd fight with Fury and he's threatening to take it to court and all the rest of it. So of those 5 we just mentioned, man, realistically, the only one that looks like it will happen is AJ and Fury. The rest of those, probably not.
Maybe Taylor Ramirez, maybe.
Well, that's another fight that seems to be taking a long time to get done for whatever reason. I don't know why that is, but let's just say, man, I'm not overly optimistic for those fights to be made in 2021. And that will give you an indication of the parlous state of boxing as it is at the moment.
Loma Lopez rematch for Conrad. Lomachenko, I wonder where he goes.
I wouldn't be against that, but I'm kind of wondering how much does Lomachenko really want that fight? So far, we've heard a lot of excuses from him and a lot of conspiracy theories from him, but I haven't seen him sort of banging the table demanding a rematch. Have you?
Not really, no.
So that gives me the impression that that fight's probably not going to happen. I mean, I have to say as well that Teofimo Lopez has disappointed me greatly since he won the title, man. You know what I mean? He's that diva way in which he's acting at the moment. That is also part of the big problem with boxing. You know what I mean? And he's a young fighter doing this type of stuff. You know what I mean? And it's crazy. You know what I mean? A guy's won the title, and then all of a sudden now he's chatting all this stuff. You don't deserve to fight me. This, that. You got to go and fight A, B, and C before I'll fight you. And I want 10 million to fight this guy. It's crazy. You know what I mean?
Well,
if you're going to act like that, you shouldn't really have fought for the title. Just let somebody else fight for it. Because like I keep saying, once you fight for a title and win it, you're no longer a prospect. You're a title holder. You're a world champion. So you need to conduct yourself as such. So you can't win a world title and then start telling the world, oh, well, I'm not going to fight you. I'm not going to fight you. You need to do this, you need to do that. If you've got mandatories and people in the top 10 or in the top 15 that are worthy of the fight, then you should be fighting them.
Well, Cambosos was mandated, wasn't it? But
Well, we will see what happens with the Cambosos fight. But all I can say is the attitude he's displaying at the moment with regards to certain fighters, it's not very healthy.
I have to say, I don't really like what Ryan Garcia's doing. I know you've said it over the last couple of weeks, but like the whole thing, I want to just address it, like you said earlier. The beating Luke Campbell, very good win. You know, that put you in a position to fight for Devin Haney for the interim belt. You know, that was what the fight was for. And then straight after that, you've called out Tank's name viciously. You've been calling out his name for a long time. And then after that, I'm seeing this week that Gervonta Davis is no longer in line for a Ryan Garcia fight. I've got a bigger name. I'm going to fight a bigger name. So what was the whole point of calling out Tank? Getting everybody excited about it, going on a Tyson podcast and saying this and that, make sure it happens next, 2 rounds, all of this. And now I see a news article this week saying, I've got a bigger name now. I'm like, come on, man, you're taking the piss. What's going on?
2 words. Clout chasing. Clout chasing. I said on your show last week, I didn't think that the fight with Tank would happen. And it seems like I was right. And even with the Tank fight, as I've said, and you repeated here, what was the point of Ryan Garcia having an eliminator with Luke Campbell for the WBC belt if you're going to win that fight and then start calling out guys that are in a lower weight class than you, even though really and truly you never wanted that fight anyway, in my opinion. And now there's talk about him fighting Manny Pacquiao, who's a welterweight.
Manny Pacquiao.
I mean, come on, man. I mean, this is a joke. And this is what I'm saying, man. You know what I mean? I keep saying it, and, you know, some people are going to say you're preaching and all the rest of it. But this is the problem with boxing. And what makes it worse is that you've got a young Ryan Garcia acting like a diva now. He's not even won a world championship belt. Can you imagine if he wins a world title, what he's going to be like then? You know what I mean? He'll probably turn around and say to the boxing public, I'm going to fight Jake Paul next. You know what I mean? That's the kind of thing that's going to go on. And then someone like Chris Mannix will say to him, yeah, Ryan, you're the shot caller. You can fight, you want to fight. Because you've got legions of followers on Instagram. This is why the sport is so fucked up, man. Seriously. It really is. I worry for
that.
Sorry?
Pacquiao, McGregor, I'm hearing. And
yeah, listen, and again, I've got to call out Manny Pacquiao on his bullshit as well. Manny Pacquiao is a great fighter, an all-time great. Nobody can deny that, man. He's one of the best fighters I've seen, yeah? However, Manny Pacquiao, stop holding boxing to ransom. You're holding that WBA belt that you creditably fought and beat Keith Thurman for. You're holding the sport to ransom. If you want to fight Conor McGregor, then you've earned that right to do that, my friend. You're a great fighter. You're a name. You're a legend. But give up the belt. Stop holding up the belt. Stop holding the belt to ransom. Walk off onto the sunset with your record intact, with your millions that you've made, and your legendary status is secure. You're a first ballot Hall of Famer without any shadow of a doubt. No one can argue that, yeah? But stop holding the sport to hostage. You've got the WBA belt. You've got no intention, it would appear, of fighting the top guys in the weight class. You're holding up guys like Jerome Ennis and people like that. And Virgil Ortiz and people like that. Stop bullshitting, man. Go and fight in these like celebrity fights with Conor McGregor, Jake Paul, and all the rest of it. Go and do that. If that's what you want to do, go and do that. If you want to stay in boxing and defend the belts, then do that. But all this stuff, you know what I mean?
Darren seems to think you're negative, man. He's put this AFC dude is very, very negative. Bye. He's gone. He's gone.
Well, that's some people can't handle the truth. You know what I mean? I'm just talking my truth, man.
DS is
I'm pretty sure that if people watching this live and people who watch the later recorded version, I don't think too many people will be disagreeing with me. Do you?
Well, it's just, I mean, people have their ways, you know. Some people will, some people won't. It is what it is.
Okay, well, you know, the vast majority of people I speak to, both in person and online, they have similar complaints about boxing at the moment.
I agree with everything you said except the Canelo is the issue, but that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
DS has put here the diva attitude that we see from the likes of Ryan Garcia and Teofimo Lopez is a result of the Money Mayweather legacy. Totally agree.
I don't agree with that, to be honest. I don't agree with that because, yes, Floyd could be accused of that later on in his career. But if you look at Floyd's record,
the Money Mayweather legacy, not the pretty boy Floyd, the Money Mayweather.
Okay, well, fair enough. But, you know, Floyd, on his come up, he fought some very, very good fighters, champions as well. I mean, look at his first belt, Gennaro Hernandez, you know what I mean? And he was, what, in his early 20s when he did that. And he wasn't favourite going into that fight either. So, you know.
Yeah, that was the Money.
The problem I've got with Ryan Garcia, and he's not even a champion yet. This is how ridiculous the sport is becoming. The guy's not even won a world championship belt yet. He's won an eliminator, and look how he's carrying on. Can you imagine if he actually does win a world title, what will happen then? And then, like I said, it's because of the boxing public, you know, I mean, your Darrens from Sweden of this world who ain't got a problem with it. That's why, you know what I mean, you're getting this in boxing. The Chris Mannix of this world openly telling Ryan Garcia, you ain't got to worry about that. You can fight who you want to fight next. Up to you. You're the shot caller. There you go.
Listen, I have to wrap it up there anyway, man. We're well over an hour into the podcast. It's been another fire episode this week. Spitting nothing but truth. And listen, man, had some great comments in the chat today. Had good few people in here as well. On the way out, guys, don't forget to hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel. We'll be doing these podcasts every single Thursday. I do a live stream on a Sunday, and I also post regular news updates to the channel as well. So if you're new to the channel, new to the podcast, hit that like button, man. Subscribe to the channel, and yeah, man, it's great to have you guys here as always. Closing out, I've got a comment here from Mohammed Ahmed. He's put, negativity is what it is. If a fighter don't want to fight, then cool, but we are fight fans. If you go to a music concert, you expect good music. So why is it different with the fighter? Fight or do one, mate?
I think that's perfectly put by Mohammed. I think he's called it, you know what I mean?
Conrad's put enough truth for a week.
I think as fans, man, we have a right to... I wouldn't say demand, but ask that the guys who participate in this sport are doing it for the right reasons, man. I mean, listen, don't be surprised if you see a Ryan Garcia versus Jake Paul fight anytime soon, because that's the way the sport seems to be going, man. It's just, you know what I mean? It's very disappointing. But I guess some people out there are going to say that I'm an older guy, just, you know what I mean, reminiscing and, you know, whatever. But I think it's fairly obvious, you know what I mean? I think, you know what I mean, you've only got to look at what's going on, man. It's disappointing. The best are not fighting the best. We're getting all these so-called celebrity fights and YouTube fights. And, you know what I mean, you wouldn't see this in other sports, you know what I mean? So, hey, man.
Yes, Pretty Boy Floyd was fighting everyone and knocking man over for fun, but this generation want the money. Yeah, that's what I was saying as well. This generation want the Money Mayweather paper without putting in Pretty Boy's work. See, Pretty Boy Floyd earned his position. Do you know what I mean? It was 20 years ago yesterday, and I'm rambling on now. I know I was supposed to end it, but I'll carry on. It was 20 years ago yesterday that he fought Diego Corrales.
Yeah, let's face it, you know, the same Money Mayweather, dare I say it, he beat a certain Canelo in the latter twilight years of his career and beat him quite comfortably as well. So, you know, yeah. I mean, a few weeks ago, we saw Ryan Garcia, some ridiculous statement that come out of his mouth, man. Very disrespectful and utterly stupid, where he was saying stuff like Floyd Mayweather's responsible for a lot of the crap that's gone on in boxing, but I'm here to turn it around. And then you've got this guy chatting this stuff. He won't even fight Devin Haney for the belt. Is it because he lost 4 times to Devin in the amateurs, I wonder? You tell us, Ryan. Why don't you want to fight the guy? You know what I mean? It's there. He's a champion, and he said he wants to fight you. If anything, you would have thought it would be Devin Haney saying, well, actually, no, go and prove yourself or do this. Devin Haney said, listen, let's do it. I want to fight. And you got the guy that is supposed to be challenging for the belt, talking about Pacquiao, talking about Tank. You know what I mean? Guys that are not even in the lightweight division. I mean, ridiculous, man. Ridiculous.
We'll leave it there, man. We'll leave it there. We'll go at it again next week. But listen, yeah, thank you to everybody for tuning in. And like I said, hit that like button on the way out, people. And we'll catch you guys on the next podcast next week, man. Big up. You got anything?
And big up to all the people watching the live stream. Also, I want to say big shout out to all the people who are supporting your channel, man. Enough respect. And stay healthy, stay COVID-free, keep wearing a mask, observe the social distancing, and let's beat this COVID thing, man. Let's knock it out.
Big up, people. See you guys next week.